Hey y'all, it's me Sydney and welcome back to Planet Syd. So today we are going to be discussing the subgenre of stoner films. So if you guys are interested in that, then stay tuned. So I was supposed to shoot this video for 420, but now it's June. So yeah, we're just gonna act like it's 420. In my defense though, well, I was partially procrastinating, but also I was waiting on my new Crocs to come in because aren't they the cutest? They're like half baked theme. Oh my god, look at them. Hey, let me get the angle right, bitch. Yeah, look at my Crocs. And outside the Crocs, I tried to, because I'm really trying to step my pussy game up with my channel and everything, as far as like fully embodying the video. So I tried to dress like dude from The Big Lebowski. So I just got like the little cardigan and like, I hope you can see my pants. So check me out. So yeah, now that I have that out the way, let's get into a little deep dive of the film subgenre of stoner films. Because me personally, I love a good stoner film. They're just always a nice little adventure to immerse yourself in. And they always have just enough going on to where it keeps you engaged, but it's not like a super deep plot that doesn't take like complex thought. So it's just always nice to just relax your brain. Stoner films have actually been around for quite a while and they have a really interesting history. So let's get into it. So I do want to explore the origin of the genre because before we get into cult classics like Pineapple Express and the Friday trilogy, we have propaganda films like Reefer Madness and Marijuana with the H. And these films basically insinuated that weed corrupts the youth, and if you smoke weed, then your life will eventually fall apart and chaos will ensue. And sometimes these propaganda films did work on instilling fear, but they all pretty much aged to be cult classics due to their absurdity. But over time, films that center the lives of stoners have become a subgenre of buddy films. And Wikipedia would describe the buddy film as, quote, an adventure and comedy film in which two people are put together and are on an adventure, a quest, or a road trip. Two often contrast in personality, which creates a dynamic on screen different from pairing of two people of the opposite gender. End quote. And I would like to point out that most of the time with stoner films and with buddy films in general, the two friends are almost always male. And I don't think that there have been too many buddy films that center on female friendships outside of like Thelma and Louise, I guess. And I'm sure that there are like probably a few more, but I can't think of any off of the top of my head. And now that I think of it, I can't really think of too many stoner films either. The only one I could think of where there's like a female as like the central character is, what is it, with Anna Faris? Smiley Face. Smiley Face. That one is actually really funny. If you haven't seen it, then watch it. But anyways, typically with stoner films, the audience goes on an adventure with the two main characters, and the adventure can range from trying to escape corrupt authority figures, to being on the run, to going to White Castle, to trying to find a car. And while on that adventure, a lot of unexpected things happen that prolongs the characters from accomplishing whatever goals they have. And they may have to work over some of their differences as well in their friendship. So usually the dynamic between the two friends is that one of them is the more serious one while the other is the more relaxed one. And usually the reason why they're in trouble as well, and the other more serious one helps them. These dynamics are what drives the plots, and usually they start off as friends and one of the friends gets tired of the other, and then eventually they have some kind of, I guess, a breakup or falling out, and eventually they make up. And this sometimes applies to friend groups as well. But yeah, some of our most beloved stoner films are Up in Smoke, Pineapple Express, the Friday trilogy, Dazed and Confused, Easy Rider, Your Highness, How High, and Dude, Where's My Car? And these films particularly have gone on to gross over tens of millions of dollars at the box office and have also been critically acclaimed for their comedic storytelling and their ability to take their audience on an adventure. So I think that that's pretty cool. Now, even though this genre did start off as propaganda films, the evolution of the genre has in a way mirrored society's relationship with weed. You can kind of see this in the 1969 film Easy Rider. Easy Rider is considered a kind of counterculture / stoner film classic. And this film is about two hippies who go on an excursion from New Orleans to Los Angeles for a drug deal. And during this cross-country motorcycle trip, they encounter a lot of small town people who make it clear that they don't align with their lifestyle. And this is like around the time where there was like the whole movement against war and people starting to embrace recreational drugs. And even though this film isn't necessarily a stoner film, it heavily features cannabis use. Fun fact, throughout this film, they were actually smoking weed. And so this film was a turning point in this genre and helped influence and shape the stoner films that we have today. So a film like Easy Rider, followed up with Cheech and Chong, really reflected society's evolving relationship with weed. And I feel like the shift in messaging as well in stoner films really signified the change in Western society's relationship with the recreational use of drugs. You can see this evolution of propaganda films that tell us that weed is bad to what we have now that tell us that it's really not that deep and sometimes fun. And even during that time and even now, of course, weed has been around for centuries, and it was prompted by the government to grow the plant hemp as crops in the early 20th century because the hemp will be used for clothes and for more practical reasons. And of course, this was on plantations, so black people were doing all of the work. But this is before cotton was used as a better alternative. But during this time period, marijuana's medicinal effects had yet to be discovered by the colonizers, so it was all good. And I saw on history.com, it said that, quote, the beat generation emerged early in the decade when a group of young people began to unite in their rejection of conventional society in favor of artistic and bohemian ideas. The beatniks also enjoyed experimenting with drugs, particularly marijuana. But the Beats weren't the first group to embrace weed. The drug started gaining traction in the US within the 1910s after Mexican refugees brought marijuana with them as they fled the violence of the Mexican Revolution. And in the early 1930s, it became popular among the hipsters and the black jazz community made up of quote-unquote hep cats, like jazz singer Cab Calloway, who had a hit with his song Reefer Man. So now I could get into like how the criminalization of marijuana is inherently racist, but we all know that. But I do appreciate that the subgenre reflects the racial diversity of weed smokers. So now I want to explore what makes these films so good and so special. And I think it's pretty interesting to think that there is an entire genre dedicated to emulating and depicting the lives of stoners. And as I was researching for this video, I noticed that this subgenre is very diverse and is one of the few genres that centers people of color as the main characters. And it also reaches box office success. And there aren't many film genres that continually choose people of color and do well at the box office unless it's a cultural or a historical film that requires a specific race to be represented. And I also appreciate that this genre represents the different cultures within the stoner community. So for example, a film like Friday is a stoner film, but it's also a black film. So even if you aren't a weed smoker, Friday has enough cultural relevance that just about any Black American can relate to at least one moment in the franchise. Whether it's how Craig's family interacts with one another or how Black neighbors interact in the neighborhood. And I can say the same for Harold and Kumar as well. Now I will say that a lot of these stoner classics are from the late 90s, early 2000s. They did play a lot on different racial stereotypes as well. I do think that that is important to point out. So that should not be overlooked. And these films also did not shy away from addressing racial issues. In an article with The Atlantic, editor Scott Meslow addresses the subgenre diversity by saying that, quote, while they may not have the obvious social heft of the somber documentaries and self-serious Citizen Kanes of the world, there's a brilliantly subversive streak to the stoner comedy. Look at Harold and Kumar. This is a successful mainstream Hollywood franchise playing in more than 2,000 theaters across the nation that stars two non-white leading men. John Cho can joke about being the quote-unquote best Korean Indian stoner comedy duo in cinematic history because there's never been another Korean Indian duo, stoner comedy or otherwise, in cinematic history. There have been other unprecedented heroes in the stoner genre though. Cheech Marin, who along with Up in Smoke co-star Tommy Chong, is one of the undisputed patriarchs of 420 cinema. Starred in 4 movies, 3 of them marijuana-centric at a time when Mexican-American leading men were virtually unheard of in Hollywood. And the first entries in the early 90s renaissance of the stoner comedy genre, Friday, Half-Baked, and How High, offered leading man roles to Black actors like Ice Cube, Chris Tucker, Dave Chappelle, Method Man, and Redman. Even comically, the Harold and Kumar franchise has consistently confronted contemporary social issues. In White Castle, both men are antagonized and arrested by a racist police officer, and they're sent to Guantanamo Bay in the film sequel after a fellow airplane passenger turns them in as terrorists. But the stoner comedy genre has done more than broaden the racial dynamics of Hollywood. It also reflected a shift in public opinion towards marijuana itself. The stoner comedy renaissance of the 90s was accompanied by a dramatic uptick in support for marijuana legalization. That change has continued to the present day. A Gallup post released last week revealed that for the first time in American history, a majority of Americans support the legalization of marijuana. I do want to point out that this article was written in like the early 2010s. The entertainment industry has rapidly and lucratively adjusted to this shift in public opinion. In 2008, the stoner comedy Pineapple Express made more than $100 million at the global box office, a box office take that would have been unheard of even a decade early. So I do think that stoner films in general do have a bigger impact on diversity in Hollywood and public opinion than the average person would think. However, these cult classics did co-sign and amplify harmful ideologies surrounding sexism and rape, so that should not be overlooked as well. Rewatching some of these films, like in some of those jokes, I was just like, ugh. Please. And I also noticed that a good chunk of these films did lack nuance in their characters, which isn't really a critique because in my humble opinion, what makes a film good to me is how it makes me feel and its ability to draw me in and take me on an adventure. And sometimes you don't need a crazy character arc or a big budget to do that. And I feel like where some of these films lack, they are able to make up for it in authenticity and being able to capture some of the daily mundane activities of young stoners who don't really have much to lose. But their defense of the patriarchy and jokes that, okay, rape culture is inexcusable, and I do want to emphasize that. These outdated ideas have mostly faded away and we don't really get big stoner comedies anymore, at least in like the 2020s and past the 2010s. But we do now have films where marijuana is essential to the plot. So think of a film like The Gentleman. So I do think that stoner films have positively and negatively impacted the film industry and pop culture in real life. So yeah, that's my thought on stoner films. I do enjoy a good stoner film. So now I want to give y'all a list of some of my faves. They aren't necessarily stoner films. Some of them are, but they're just in the brief period that I did experiment with plant medicine. I just take the alcohol at this point. The brief period that I did, it was fun, but it was short-lived because I'm not meant to be a weed smoker, but that's neither here nor there. But the brief period that I did, there are specific films that and TV shows that I felt drawn to, and in general, these are still some of my faves. So one would be, of course, the Scary Movie franchise. Well, like the first three. I mean, I'm assuming if you're watching this video, then you have seen the Scary Movie franchise. But yeah, those are funny. So yeah, those are funny. And then the Scooby-Doo movies, specifically when they went to Spooky Island, that was always a go-to for me. It still is. Another one is a show, which I don't know if y'all seen this, but if you haven't, you need to watch this show because I watch this show every single day. I still watch this show all the time. The Midnight Gospel on Netflix. Oh my God. That carried me through the pandemic, and still I watch that show with the season at least once a week. Like, if you like deep thought and just like really good animation, I believe that the animators who do like Adventure Time were on that. It's an adult animation, but they also explore like philosophical topics and like really deep conversations about life and death and everything in between. So yeah, if you haven't heard of the Midnight Gospel, I think you should watch it. My favorite episode is A Vulture with Honor, A Vulture for Honor, one of those. And the first episode where it was like the clowns and the bears, whatever it was. Another one is Solar Opposites. Solar Opposites is so good. I love it. I think they have like 3 seasons out. The people who made Rick and Morty made Solar Opposites, and it's so good. I think you guys should watch that. Another film that just always hit whenever I used to get high and is really funny, I haven't watched in a while though, is Hot Chick. I like that one. Somebody put me onto that one, and that one had me cracking the fuck up. So Hot Chick is really good. Another one, of course, is Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. That one is my favorite one out of the genre. I remember, this was before I was vegan, obviously. I used to love White Castle. I don't even know where the fuck a White Castle is even at. I remember that being like an essential part of my childhood and always loving like the little sliders. Anyways, yeah, Harold and Kumar go to White Castle. That one is always funny. And of course, Rick and Morty. The Friday trilogy, of course, number one. The first one is always my favorite. And what is it, Friday After Next? Like the Christmas one, that one is hilarious. I used to have that one DVD and I used to watch it like every other day. Pineapple Express, of course. The Big Lebowski. I love the Coen brothers. And last and most certainly not least is Dazed and Confused. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to check out my clothing brand, Main Character The Label. And also check out my movie theme makeup brand, Box Office Beauty. I just redesigned my website and I also just released a new palette. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys feel safe and seen wherever you are. And I hope you guys are finding joy and fulfillment on your journey of self-expression. Until next time.